Hi, Virgo. Um, there are moments in a life when something arrives that the mind genuinely did not see coming, not because the signs weren't there, but because the version of yourself that was watching for them had long since stopped looking in that particular direction, had quietly, without much ceremony, filed that particular possibility under things that happen for other people. Things that require a different kind of luck, or a different set of circumstances, or a version of your life that hadn't quite materialized yet. And then something arrives anyway, not loudly, not always with the full fanfare the occasion might seem to deserve, but real, undeniably, almost disorienting, real. And some of you are either standing at the edge of exactly that kind of arrival or standing just inside it, still blinking in the particular way that people blink when reality has exceeded what they had been allowing themselves to imagine. If this found you today, I think something is already in motion that your deepest sense of yourself has been quietly preparing for longer than you realize. A theme appearing strongly in this reflection is the energy of an opening that arrives from a direction that wasn't being watched. And this is worth sitting with because the unexpected quality of what may be approaching for some of you is not incidental. It is not simply a matter of timing or surprise. It is, in some ways, a reflection of the particular way that the most genuinely transformative things in a person's life tend to move. They don't tend to come from the direction of our most vigilant hoping. They tend to come from the side, from the angle that wasn't being monitored, from the door that was left ajar, not because someone was consciously waiting for what came through it, but because something in them, something quieter and more patient than conscious intention, had simply never fully closed it. An energy that may be present for many of you right now is one of stunned recognition. Not the cold shock of something unwanted arriving, but the warm, almost breathless quality of something that belongs to you suddenly making itself visible, because that is what the best kind of unexpected arrival tends to feel like. Not like a stranger appearing at the door, but like something that was always supposed to be yours finally finding its way home to you. There is a quality to that experience that is almost impossible to describe to anyone who hasn't felt it. The sense that the world has, in some specific and undeniable way, rearranged itself in your favor. That the very particular thing you needed or the opportunity that aligns with the very particular person you have been becoming has somehow found you despite everything that might have kept it from arriving. A pattern that sometimes emerges at exactly this threshold is a kind of internal scrambling to make sense of good news. The mind, conditioned by previous experience, moves quickly toward the question of what might be wrong with this, what the catch might be, what has been missed. Because for many people who have navigated long stretches of effort without equivalent return, the arrival of something genuinely positive can feel, paradoxically, more disorienting than difficulty. Difficulty is familiar. It has a texture that has been practiced and survived. But this quality of something actually working, of an offer or an opportunity or an unexpected development moving towards you with genuine substance. This can briefly feel like something the nervous system doesn't quite have a category for. And an energy appearing here is the gentle but direct invitation to resist the pull toward finding the problem in what is presenting itself as an opening. And this resistance, the conscious, deliberate choice to stay in the opening rather than immediately scanning it for exits, is itself a form of courage, perhaps a less celebrated form than the courage required to move through difficulty, but real courage nonetheless. The courage of someone who has been through enough to have developed excellent radar for disappointment, choosing to lower that radar in the presence of something that deserves to be received with a different quality of attention. Not naively, not without discernment, but with the specific grounded willingness to let something genuinely good be genuinely good without immediately trying to manage it into something smaller or safer or more consistent with previous experience. This reflection invites you to consider what your first response was or is when something genuinely good and unexpected enters your awareness, and whether that response serves you or whether it has been shaped by a previous chapter of your life that is no longer the accurate context for what is arriving now. Here's the thing about a dream come true. It almost never looks exactly the way the dream looked in the imagination, because dreams held privately over time tend to accumulate a kind of idealized specificity, a precise shape, a particular form, a set of exact conditions that the mind decides are the necessary components of the thing being hoped for. And what actually arrives when something genuinely aligned with that dream finds its way into reality often comes in a slightly different form. A different context, a different presentation, a different set of surrounding circumstances than the version that was imagined in the quieter moments of hoping. And a pattern worth noticing here is that this difference between the precise form of the imagined dream and the real form of the actual arrival can cause people to miss what has arrived, to look past it because it doesn't match the exact shape of what was expected, to hold out for the version that was imagined while the version that is actually available stands quietly in front of them, waiting to be recognized for what it is. An energy that may be present here is the invitation to look at what is actually in front of you, at what is actually being offered in the actual form it is taking, and to ask honestly whether it aligns with the essence of what you have been hoping for rather than insisting on the exact shape, because the essence is what matters. The essence is what was always the real content of the hope. And sometimes the form in which the essence arrives is more interesting, more complex, more generative than the original imagined version would have been. This reflection invites you to consider whether there is something already present in your life, some offer, some opportunity, some person or possibility that you may have been looking past because it didn't arrive in precisely the form you were expecting, and whether looking at it differently might reveal something you genuinely want. An energy that may be present in this moment is one of threshold readiness. That particular quality of a person who has done sufficient inner and outer work that when something significant arrives, they are actually not performatively, not theoretically, but genuinely capable of receiving it and building from it. And what is worth understanding about threshold readiness is that it is rarely announced. It doesn't come with a bell or a signal or a conscious sense of arrival. It tends to simply be present quietly in the moment that something is actually needed. revealed not by the calm before it, but by the quality of what happens when a real opportunity makes itself available and the person it arrives for discovers that they know what to do with it. Um, and this is one of the more quietly remarkable things about the kind of transformation that has been happening for many of you in recent experience. The growth that took place in the less dramatic chapters, the internal reorganization, the recalibration of values, the gradual but genuine shift in how you understand your own worth and what you are willing to accept and what you are ready to reach for. All of that work has been creating a version of yourself that is more capable of recognizing and seizing genuine opportunity than the previous version was. Not because you are more lucky, because you are more ready, more honest about what you want, more trusting of your own instincts, more willing to move towards something real even when its arrival is surprising. And readiness of this kind, genuine, interior, unhurried readiness is one of the most underrated forms of preparation available to a person because it doesn't show up in any external checklist. It doesn't look like anything in particular from the outside. It is simply the quality that is present in a person who has done enough real work on themselves that when the moment comes, they recognize it. They know what to do. They step forward without needing to be convinced that they deserve what is being offered or that they are equal to what is being asked. That quality of readiness is quiet and solid and completely yours. And it is, in some ways, the most important thing you are bringing to this threshold. This reflection invites you to consider how the person you are now is different from the person who first began hoping for something like this. What has changed in you? What has been built? What has been released? And whether you can feel in the honest space of your own interior that you are genuinely ready in a way that earlier versions of yourself were not. A theme worth sitting with here is the difference between changes that happen to a person and changes that happen through them. Changes that arrive from outside and require only reaction versus changes that emerge from the convergence of external opportunity with internal readiness, where something arrives at exactly the moment when a person has become the person specific version of themselves capable of meeting it. The second kind tends to be more lasting, more genuinely transformative, more deeply integrated into the fabric of who a person becomes on the other side of them. And a pattern appearing here suggests that what may be approaching for many of you belongs to the second category, not change as disruption, change as arrival. Change as the outer world finally catching up with something that has been growing on the inside for a long time. This reflection invites you to consider what version of yourself is going to step into this opening, whether you will meet what is arriving with the full quality of who you have become, or whether old habits of smallness or self-doubt might cause you to receive it at a fraction of its actual available depth. And this is where it gets both exciting and important, because a major change, even the most welcome kind, even the kind that aligns perfectly with the direction you have been hoping to move, tends to ask something of the person it arrives for. It tends to ask for a quality of presence and engagement and forward-moving courage that the comfortable status quo did not require. It asks you to actually show up for what you said you wanted, to not retreat, at the moment of its arrival into the familiar territory of what was safe precisely because it was known. To step through the door that has opened without waiting for the absolute certainty that what is on the other side will be perfect. Because perfect is not what real opportunity tends to be. Real opportunity tends to be exciting and slightly overwhelming and accompanied by a genuine requirement for action, for the willingness to be in motion, for the particular courage of someone who encounters something genuinely aligned with their direction and chooses deliberately, fully, without the safety net of absolute guarantee to move toward it. And an energy appearing here is the suggestion that this is the quality of engagement that may be called for in the relatively near future. Not passive waiting, not tentative, one foot in approach, but the full, committed, I recognize what this is quality of engagement that genuine opportunities tend to deserve and tend to reward. This reflection invites you to consider what full commitment to the direction, the opportunity, the change that may be presenting itself would actually look like in the specific practical reality of your life, and whether there is anything still holding you at the edge of it rather than fully inside it. The closing energy of this reflection carries something that feels genuinely celebratory in the deepest, most grounded sense of that word, not celebratory in the sense of performance or noise, but in the quiet internal sense of a person who has arrived at a moment they had stopped being sure would come and is now, with something approaching awe, recognizing it for what it is. There is a particular quality of joy available in that recognition, the kind that doesn't need to be performed for anyone, that exists entirely in the private space of one's own honest acknowledgement that something real has arrived, that the work was not wasted, that the direction was right, that the version of the future that seemed sometimes like pure aspiration is now standing in the room with you, offering itself with both hands, and that joy, private, quiet, almost reverential, is worth protecting for a moment before it gets translated into action. Worth sitting inside of, however briefly, before the practical requirements of the opportunity begin to make their demands, because it is a form of information. It is the interior confirmation that this arrival is genuinely aligned with what you were hoping for, not just what seemed available or reasonable or safe, but what you actually wanted in the fullest, most honest version of your desire. And that confirmation, felt clearly and without management, becomes a compass, something to return to in the moments when the process of pursuing this becomes complicated or uncertain or more demanding than the initial excitement anticipated. Something that says, yes, this is the right direction. Keep going. You have been moving towards something through the uncertainty and the effort and the seasons that asked more of you than they gave back. Through the periods when the gap between where you were and where you wanted to be felt so wide that it was sometimes easier to stop looking at it directly. Through all of it, something in you kept the direction, kept the intention, kept showing up for a version of your life that felt true even when its arrival felt distant. And what may be approaching now, this unexpected, dreamed of, genuinely transformative opening, is in some real sense the consequence of that persistence. The return on an investment you made in yourself, quietly and without guarantee, across a stretch of time that required more faith than evidence. Let yourself feel the full weight of this moment. let yourself be moved by it. Let yourself stand in the reality of it, not rushing to manage it or minimize it or immediately reduce it to a to-do list, but actually genuinely allowing it to be as significant as it is. You have earned the right to be astonished by your own life right now. You have earned the right to let something feel like a dream come true. And you have, beyond any doubt, earned the right to step into what is being offered with the full confidence of someone who is not here by accident, but by the deliberate, patient, quietly heroic act of continuing to become exactly the person this moment was always going to require.